My name is Martin Klaassen, and welcome to my presentation today. Some of you may know me from my Klaassen lighting design practice. Some even may know me from my activities with lighting design of things, which be quite a big driver for my presentation today. And some of you maybe also know me from my master classes, my Light Talk master classes, including my books and my vlogs, etc. But today I want to talk about the situation, the trends in the world following the COVID-19 pandemic that we are living through, because that will definitely have an impact on how we have to approach and will be approaching our lighting design. So let me share my screen and show you what I have in mind and what my thoughts are about this subject. So I have titled this presentation Post-COVID-19, the coronavirus disease that is affecting so many people around the world. But most of all, I want to look at what lighting means for 2020 and beyond of that in the world of smart IoT and our lighting design activities. So there's quite a number of COVID-19 challenges. We are dealing with cleaning and disinfecting spaces for which UVC has been found to be very effective. We have issues with social distancing and contact tracing information, part of our nearly daily lives, I would say now. We also are looking at contactless actions and controls where we don't have to use our hands to activate certain things. Also important in our new world is what I call architectural health. Things like air quality, noise levels, temperature levels, humidity, also lighting levels, by the way. And something that some of you may have experienced also, the lockdowns, quarantine. I myself was in 14 days quarantine in a hotel on my arrival in Australia. Not really a very pleasant experience, I have to say, because I wasn't able to go out. I couldn't even open a window where I was. So really the availability of natural daylight for my human well-being was very important. I was lucky to have a big window facing out, but a lot of people that are confined to interior spaces may have a very big interest in making sure that they're exposed to good quality daylight, at least reproduction of daylight. So I've been talking about, we'll be talking about that. There's also a lot of need in this post-COVID-19 world about monitoring what's going on, managing what's going on, having alert functions if things go the wrong way, and integrate all that in smart networks. So let me have a bit of a chat about all these things. So in the new world of smart IoT and integrated lighting design, we will be looking at how ultraviolet C will influence what we are doing. Space sanitation is something that becomes more and more used. Now there's highly professional equipment that's very, very expensive. But you can imagine that by using UVC in an integrated lighting design solution, this can become much more affordable and much more common in our new world. That would include things like air quality and architectural health, as I mentioned before. I'll be looking at human well-being, the availability of tunable light to create circadian rhythms that can help us feel more comfortable and have a better well-being. So that is something that is also coming up very strongly in this new world. Looking how sensors will impact our world and how sensors will be integrated to monitor and manage the spaces that we are in. I'll be talking about Li-Fi. Some of you may have heard of it, some of you may not, but I think it's something I need to highlight as a trend that I see moving into our world as well. There's light as a service, where we have smart lighting solutions without capital investments. Something that is related to the fact that we are moving to a world that is working on services rather than product deliveries. And then most of all, having in mind the climate change that we are going through, create a sustainable world through our lighting designs as well. So let me start with UVC first, because I think it's important to understand what the issues are with UVC, and that's not something that we just can step in and do. It requires quite a study and quite a good understanding. First of all, the UVC that we are talking about is the ultraviolet that is in the lower short range band of the frequency in the invisible spectrum. It's at 254 nanometers. It has been proven to kill the COVID bacteria virus. So that has been done by many research centers, universities, and this is an extract of the latest IAS committee report where they also confirm the germicidal ultraviolet effects that can be achieved. The problem with the UVC, though, is that it's detrimental to the human body. So we need to avoid any direct contact. It affects our skin and our health. So whatever it is, when we use UVC, we have to make sure that there's nobody in the room so that you cannot be exposed to it. So that's an extra safety element that you really need to manage in order to be able to apply it. The other thing that as a designer, I think you need to know is that it also ages and discolors certain sensitive materials. There's a whole list of materials available that reacts to ultraviolet C. So if you do apply ultraviolet, you need to make sure that the architect and interior designers are aware of how that potentially can affect the materials and finishes that they want to apply in a certain space. So important to know. There is, however, a new development, which is called the far UVC at 222 nanometers, which has some promising research where apparently the effect that UVC has on COVID is still maintained, but it doesn't have a detrimental effect on our human body. So if this research is confirmed to be indeed correct, then we would have less of an issue with safety in terms of exposure to the human body. So research is still going on, but it's something to keep an eye on, that we should be aware that potentially, rather than the 254 nanometers, the far UVC in 222 nanometers could be of use in fighting the coronavirus. Now, just to give you a bit of an example how all that works, and I'm using hospitality. You may know that I'm quite active in the hospitality world with my projects, so it makes sense for me to relate to that in terms of trying to explain what's going on. People, when they go into a hotel, they check in, obviously, they stay in the hotel, they either go out and come back at night, or they use hotel facilities, whatever it is. But in the meantime, on a daily basis, housekeeping comes to your room, cleans the room, so that it's ready for when you return. The problem is now that if we want to achieve ultraviolet C, how do we do that? When do we clean? When is it good for staff to enter? How do we operate it? Is it safe to do? All these questions now needs to be asked, because technically the housekeeping personnel could have COVID. The guests could have COVID. So do you do it before the staff enters, or before and after the staff has entered? After the guest has left? There's multiple questions to be asked. So this is obviously something that needs to be discussed with an operator in this case, or if it's a workspace environment with the owner of the workspace, the management of the workspace. But it all comes with additional costs in terms of manpower and equipment. You will need people that are trained to operate all this and know what to do. It needs to be coordinated in terms of when to do it and how to plan it in your overall scheduling. How do I make sure that we actually achieve the quality of disinfection that is required? So it revolves very much around people, human-centric, and it's important because that's also where potential mistakes and failures can happen. But all is done with the idea of creating safety for both the staff, service personnel, and the actual guests and users of the space. When we talk about ultraviolet, we have a choice. We have a choice between mobile equipment and a choice between permanently installed equipment. Right now, there's not much permanently installed equipment available. A lot is being developed, and I'll show that in my next slide. So a lot of it's done through mobile equipment. It's fairly expensive. These machines and equipments basically work on a timer. Somebody needs to put it into a room, make sure that it's correctly located in space, then hit the start button and get out of that space. Obviously, it's timer activated. There are safety devices with sensors, but many of the equipment I've seen is quite poorly designed and not that safe. There's a lot of risk factors for mistakes with mobile equipment. Have they put it in the right location? Do you need to do it multiple times? Whereas using a permanent installation allows you to calculate exactly how to install it, where to install it, what the coverage is, to make sure that with a single location, you know exactly what you can cover in space. It's a one-time investment, and then it's all fully automated in terms of disinfection. And with the necessary sensory equipment, you'll be sure that there's nobody in the room, and you can activate it at all times without having people go into that room at all. As far as I can see, the permanent installation is the most cost-effective right now, but there's not many things available in that respect. So a lot of people resort on very expensive equipment. Some of the professional cleaning equipments with UVC are up to the hundreds of thousands of dollars per equipment. You can see that that's not that easy. Where are we with smart ultraviolet? There is the conventional UVC technology, the fluorescent tube-based systems. Basically quite efficient, the typical 36 watt type of fixtures, 900 or 1200 mil long tubes. And from my understanding and knowledge right now, one linear point like that can cover about 20 square meters within 20 to 30 minutes for a typical room of, say, space of about 20 square meters. Interesting to know, with typical ceiling heights of 2.5, 3 meters or something. So that works pretty well. You can calculate basically with specific programs. You can actually make sure that you know how long the exposure time is. So you can all prepare and calculate it. And that is it compares with the LED version of UVC. It does exist, and the wavelength is slightly higher, to my understanding, about 265 nanometers, but still same sort of range. But it's not as efficient. It's probably about 1/5 to 1/10 of the efficiency, depending on the systems. So you need much more LEDs and many more LEDs to create similar effects. So that's why you will see that most companies are aiming to use the typical conventional UVC technology, the fluorescent tube types, rather than LED UVCs. But because the LEDs are more directional, there is quite a lot of development going on within the UVC LEDs as well. That could still potentially be a source, but most developments right now are with the traditional UVC technology. Many companies have products in development with patents pending. If you get, probably like me, many emails about that. You have to be very careful and make sure that you work with reliable companies because there's a lot of cowboys in the market in regards to UVC systems. All that has to come with safe sensor technology, because obviously, as I mentioned, it's detrimental to our health. So it can only be applied when nobody's in that particular space. So it's about detection of human absence rather than human presence. It's a slight different approach, in my opinion at least, because you need to understand when the room is empty, not when the room is being occupied in terms of somebody's entering or there's already somebody there. You need to sort of a reverse approach in terms of understanding that people are not in the room, that's an empty room, rather than a room where people are entering. But it basically is about using sensor technology that understands, that can measure that there's nobody in the room. It also means that you may need to have thermal body heat sensoring. People may be sleeping in the room, so not really moving, or small pets may be in the room. So you need to have a combination. There's also sort of radar, laser sensors. There's many different things that are being applied right now. I'm not sure which one is the best, but it has to come with some sort of smart UVC sensoring that also can be used to understand how spaces are being used. But sensor technology is an integral part of using UVC. So I mentioned that we want to, well, the world is developing smart sensors, and most of all, those sensors are getting smaller and smaller. In the white cloud in this image, you can see the current situation with most of the sensors. They're fairly big, several centimeters in diameter at times. But we're moving into technologies where the functions can all be combined in a very tiny sensor, like on the finger that you see there. Combining ambient lighting levels, color temperature, things like presence and motion, even finding out direction and flow of where people go, temperature of the room, all that in a tiny sensor, basically the size of your camera in your mobile phone. That's the sort of size the technology is moving towards. And if that's the case, you can understand that it will be very easy to integrate into the trim of a light fixture, for instance. And that's something that's happening. It's in development. And you may say, why lighting? Well, first of all, lighting is present in every single space. There is already power in lighting. It has interconnectivity. Most lights are all connected to some sort of control system. And most of all, we know exactly where the lighting is. So in terms of planning and scheduling and collecting data, you know where the data is coming from. So lighting is now the #1 choice to integrate all kinds of smart technologies, and sensors are part of that. I mentioned the smart sensors, but smart sensors are also used to understand how people are using space. I mentioned social distancing, heat mapping, and space usage. Nowadays, it's important to understand where people are. You can't come anywhere where people are not talking about keeping your distance. In some cases, 2 meters. In some countries, it's 1.5 meters. I mean, it varies from place to place and country to country. But that social distancing is probably something that will stay for quite a while. And understanding how your property complies with this social distancing can be something that could be done with sensoring. I recently spoke to Amazon Web Services, and they have this new app that comes together with their CCTV equipment. And then it projects a green circle around someone when moving, when they have proper distancing, and becomes a red circle when 2 people are too close to each other. Very simple, but very effective. When you stay straight away, you can see that two people are too close, and it then sends some sort of an alert or something. But a lot of companies are working on this. There's a Singapore company that works on a social distancing app that can be integrated into light fixtures as well. So that's something that we need to monitor for ourselves, understand how that's being used, and we could potentially collaborate with people like that to integrate that into lighting systems. That comes together with things that I mentioned before, like room health, quality monitoring, hands-free controls, etc. Now, let's talk about human well-being, because there is now an increased demand and need for systems that can contribute to human well-being. And that's particularly driven now with the COVID pandemic, where people are confined to interior spaces through either a lockdown or quarantine, etc. So what does it mean? What is human well-being really? First of all, you it affects your mood, it affects your energy levels. You feel more comfortable, you can be more productive, your quality of sleep has proven to be better. It generally improves your health and well-being. The thing is that visually you can see better, biologically you will feel better, you'll function better, sorry, and emotionally you'll be feeling better. So that's the impact that lighting has proven to have on our human well-being. This is not something that's invented. That's something that research has proven over and over, that light has a very positive effect on our well-being. So it makes sense that specifically now in COVID, in post-COVID world, we look at these aspects where people feel better and feel more comfortable. Certainly, if you consider that a lot of people spend 90% of their time indoors, so it's worth looking at this. Now, there's a couple of different ways that we have applied this circadian lighting or lighting for human well-being. There is a traditional tunable white light. I mean, that has been around for quite a while. It's basically artificially reproduced natural daylight by the use of warm and cool lighting. It has been used to create office environment for active and relaxation times, but is also used in hospitality, for instance, to create wake-up scenes instead of using your alarm clock, where you have warm light that comes up smoothly in the morning, so that you've been waking up by so-called reproduced daylight. It's even being used for jet lag programs. So reproduction of natural daylight through tunable white light has been around, but is something that can still be used very much today. There's actually a next level up, and that's called tunable white light, but in this case, reproducing the full spectrum of natural daylight colors. Some of you may be familiar with Coilux, and I think Signify now also has a new well-being lighting that not only uses tunable white light, but also RGB, so that they can really create the full spectrum of daylight and even recreate sun effects and moonlighting effects and things like that. This is quite an important step forward, and we have done a few projects where we have used this. It really gives an extra dimension to the space. You feel like you're looking outside or daylight is coming into your space. It's really a step up from the tunable white light that we know today. And then there is a new development, that's daylight streaming. Now, you may know Spotify, where you stream music to a loudspeaker. Now, this is streaming light to a light speaker. I'm personally involved in this as well. There's a company called Dagger in Sweden that is developing this and has a patent to do that. We're advising them on this, but it's, to my experience, even one level up from what the natural full colors of the days are being reproduced by using white light and RGB. This is using video recordings to actually reproduce what's going on in a certain space and then reproduce it in an interior space. You can select scenes using, again, high quality white light and RGB. Can be live or pre-recorded, so you can imagine that you can have a camera outside and reproduce what's going on inside, including passing clouds or rain showers, or you can have exactly the same effect as what you're recording. Or you have a whole library of pre-recorded lighting effects, which by itself opens also new opportunities, where, for instance, you can, say in a terminal building where there's actually no real access to daylight, you can create a skylight that reproduces the actual light from outside. So giving you a connection to what's happening outside, giving you a feeling of having that natural daylight. but also in environments like a zoo, where tigers from the Amazon could benefit from having actual light streamed from the Amazon sky. It will feel natural for the animals in the habitat, but it also will probably feel like realistic for those who visit and look at it. Many different opportunities, I think, with daylight streaming, which is a new development that I just wanted to mention as a trend that I see coming up as well. Again, I want to talk about controls. Smart controls will become so important in everything, whether it's controlling lights, but we cannot escape the fact that we will be controlling much more than light. Everything is sort of integrated in one program, in one app, whether you use your mobile, your tablet, or voice control digital assistants. It's something that's coming up. We're looking more and more at using wireless applications where we don't have to touch controls. And I think that's something that is sort of a change in our mind in when we develop lighting, because we look at lighting effects, but very often we just think of a control panel, that's it, and we program scenes. Now we need to go one step further and see how that can be done through services on a mobile device, a tablet, or to other means of controlling without really touching anything. You could imagine that you scan a QR code on entering a hotel room, and that provides you with the controls for that room, for instance. I mean, there's many potential applications and possibilities there, but the fact is that we are more and more moving to services using remote controls, wireless controls, smart controls, where there's no need for you to touch any switch or control. All that comes together into a smart network. All those lights, all those controls are linked up together to whatever ecosystems exist in that particular building. It can be Bluetooth, can be something else. There's many different systems. All of that uses what I call IoT sensing through sensors and other smart methods into the lighting and other systems. And it's all related back into a management system, into a dashboard where you can see what's happening in space, whether there's any alert, any malfunctioning, any actions to be taken, any scheduling planned. You get real-time data, you can get historical data that show you trends on how people use spaces, etc. An integral part of the design process now, because everything now is about data and where and how to use that data to improve the environment that you're in. Now, a quick word about smart communication through Li-Fi. Li-Fi is something that uses the lighting point, just to show you where it is. You have the 3G, 4G radio wave bands where the Wi-Fi is currently located. Li-Fi makes use of the infrared and visible part of the spectrum. Much longer waves, but it's much faster, much more reliable, much more secure. Yeah, there's quite a lot of requirements, demands for it, because business guests often complain about slow connections. Some of you may have been in hotels and offices and spaces where the Wi-Fi is really poor. But obviously using Li-Fi increases the speeds tremendously. It's about 10 times faster, very reliable, very secure. So something that is moving quite fast as well, and that we need to consider. This is an example from Signify. They call it True Li-Fi. There's some other companies like Pure Li-Fi that also produce Li-Fi systems. But it's quite fast, but very limited in terms of coverage right now. In other words, you need to have a receiver right above where you're working. You need a dongle that you plug into your laptop, and there's a transceiver in the ceiling that creates that connection. But it's very easy to work with. I have worked with it myself. I've got a sample in my office. It's very easy. It's also seamlessly moves from a Li-Fi environment to Wi-Fi environment, a bit like you're using your flight mode in an airplane. That's how simple you can switch from Wi-Fi to Li-Fi. Just put it on your flight mode, and then you can then automatically move to your Li-Fi situation. That means that Wi-Fi and Li-Fi can live together next to each other. So important to understand that, because the whole infrastructure, the lighting infrastructure, not only will be with wireless networks, voice control, alerts, and GPS positioning, and all kind of data, but also can integrate Li-Fi at the same time. So all these things I think are important to understand when you start designing lighting, that you need to understand that all these elements can be incorporated into lighting. And also another quick word about light as a service, because I think that's also a business model that is coming in. We live in a world of services. Everybody uses their mobile phone for any kind of services and research, etc. So it's not strange and not surprising to understand that we're moving from typical product ownership to service deliveries, also in the lighting environment. Whether it's UVC or Li-Fi or smart network systems, everything can be provided as a service, where you don't pay any capital investment. It's basically like your copy machine in the office. You pay for a service. You don't pay for the machine itself. You just pay a monthly fee. And if there's any issue in terms of failures or breakdown or maintenance required, you just call your service provider and they come and fix it. Same is possible with lighting. There's several projects around the world that already work on this model. The good part of this is that the providers, which is generally a combination of lighting manufacturers and contractors and maybe financial institutions, they provide top quality products, because it's in their own interest to make sure that whatever they provide works in a durable and efficient way. So it comes generally with good quality light fixtures, also with smart monitoring, so they can monitor what's going on. So you get the top of the top best installations through light as a service. So it's a very interesting development. We are also looking at a few pilot projects with this, but I think it's something to monitor also in terms of trends. To finalize my presentation, we're looking at smart cities and smart buildings, obviously, in the near future. And we should not lose track of the fact that we need to do that in a very sustainable way. We need to make sure that we reduce our resource wasting, that we create a sustainable future, to making sure that we minimize our CO2 emissions, make sure that we save energy wherever we can, optimize the use of spaces, maximize our resources, and in the process also facilitate wayfinding. I mentioned before that lighting is the ideal host. It's present in every space. It has the power, it has the connectivity, and the location is known. So by integrating smart solution in lighting, we create a holistic approach to smart implementation of all these features. That requires a new world, a new approach, and we have to make the change into becoming what I have dubbed the lighting designer of things, because we need to understand that we not only work with lighting partners, we need to work with infrastructural partners and IoT partners to make it all work and integrate together. And in that way, the lighting designer of the future will be the gatekeeper and the guardian of good quality lighting design, make sure that we comply with standards and have the professional integrity of the end result. So thank you very much. That was my presentation. I hope you liked it. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me at mklaassen@kldesign.co. Thank you very much.